Yeah, to report.
Any report? Thank you. Andrew. Bruce Simpson. Just introduction of our area manager. We're waiting. Anyone to do. And she's well, so come online at some point. But we'll progress at the meeting. You can see that happens. Forum. Thank you. Eva, would you like to come forward? Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi, Eva.
Hello.
This is to do with the Victoria Street bus.
It is. Later.
So good morning. Thanks for hearing us. My name's Heather Turtle. This is Joanne Richards. We both live on Victoria Street in Tararoo, which is a 5K no exit road, only car seal 200 metres up to the concrete ford. And we're both on the gravel section of the road. Joanne just over the ford and myself 250 metres further up.
Right.
So the volume of traffic that uses this road has markedly increased over the last few years. You know, there'd be 40 cars a day or so, particularly from late spring to early autumn, and then major issues of near car and pedestrian accidents, noise and dust. Due to the road being on an incline, the gravel is constantly pushed down the slope by rain, traffic and gravity, and quickly becomes very pothole. And I've contacted the council on a few previous occasions with RFS service requests and endeavour to get the road tar sealed up to the turnaround, which is only a half a kilometre distance for the tar seal that we're asking for. However, in spite of being told that it was on the project plan 2021, and after constantly following through, it appears it's no longer on the council agenda. So the traffic volume is due to the Buddhist retreat having lots of courses up there, 2 popular swimming holes, one by the ford, first ford, and used mostly by families, and the other further up the road at a waterfall, which the young people can mostly use. Yeah. Cyclists, walkers, trampers also use the road frequently, and they're concerned for speed of some of the vehicles and cyclists coming down the hill, as well as accidents waiting to happen on violent payments. And for my part, where I live, I'm greatly affected by dust, noise and near accidents. I'm sure there'll be a car cruising down the blind corner by me, just this crunches brakes all the time. It's an invasion of privacy. These cars, they don't over the ford and they come up, they use Joanne's driveway to turn or my driveway going up to turn around, no signage up there. And my driveway particularly is hard to get in and out of that entrance. And the turnaround is still 250 metres further up from me, but there's no signage. And another major safety issue on the tar seal bit of Victoria Street is the access to the holiday park. It needs a give way or stop sign. Countless times, either in the car or on foot, I've had near misses, and I know other people have too, from vehicles and cyclists going straight down from the holiday park, Rocky's track entrance. They just don't look to see if there's traffic or pedestrians. And then Joanne will just now add the safety issues she has.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So, like Heather said, I just think that the volume of traffic there coming up our road now, well, the roading is totally inadequate for that. I live directly adjacent to the ford, so I've got a 2-storey house set the back section and a sleep out towards the front. And I did circulate this letter to the residents, and so I'm speaking for the residents as well, and they'll be happy to put their name to these issues as well. So due to the road being unsealed, I think the main issues, there is dust, like enormous volumes of dust that whether people are going a bit slow or fast, because it's an incline, because it's potholes, because the gravel's slippery, wheels skid and then there's create dust. I don't know if any of you have been down there and seen the dust that's created. But the sleep out now is just inundated by dust all the time because of that. Any new metal, like Peter said, is just they put it on and then immediately with the first rain, it's just washed down to the ford, and either goes into the ford or sits at the bottom of the ford. And then that further compounds the problems, you know, with the potholes and cars accelerating. Then, you know, after the first rain, the metal's washed down there, then we wait months for the potholes to be fixed. And I've actually gone out there manually with my wheelbarrow and spade and tried to fill those potholes by getting the metal off the board and bringing it back up again. Noise pollution really with the loose metal. It creates a lot of noise when there's cars after car coming up Victoria Street. Safety, it's a big issue up there with kids. I've seen several near misses with children running across the road, and just one recently that nearly got hit when a person, young person, was kind of speeding up the incline, and dad was on one side, child on the other, and then the child thought, I'll try and get across the road quickly to get dad, and boy, that was a close miss, that one. You know, young people just do tend to travel a bit faster. So the parking issues, people park all over the place. It's mayhem at times up there with people coming, going, turning around, all in that little stretch of my property, you know, from the ford to my property. Both Heather and I have broken water pipes due to cars running over them. The traffic flow issues where cars are parked either side of the road just after the ford, that creates some issues. When I built the sleep out, the council required native screening to be put in, so I've done that, which I've had knocked over a number of times by cars backing into it. So I've had to actually take some of those plants out, just because they keep getting run over. People get their vehicles stuck multiple times a year there. They put their car wheels into the gravel where the only parking area is, because it doesn't have a hard base. It just has a whole lot of soft gravel on the top. So every year I help people out of there. Cars park on my property, they block my property, they turn around in my driveway. Not a safety issue, just annoying. I can have like 30 vehicles turning in and out of my driveway on a hot day. The other safety issues I just want to bring up is the camp entrance in Victoria Street, as Heather's mentioned, where a number of residents have nearly been T-boned. Kevin and Margaret Brammer, who live just across from the entrance, has suggested that it's frightening watching what happens there. And I know Peter Carter has been asking for years to have something done there, whether it's speed bumps, stop sign, something. Cyclists, again, coming down the incline, going there, so, you know, I could easily back out and they could run directly into me. Fly tipping over the banks at the turnaround point by the second ford, and the next turnaround after the second ford. The riverbank, if you've ever walked down there, it's a mess. It's horrible. There's hazardous rubbish down there. And then, you know, the odd time, last year we get the rotting animal carcasses chucked over the side and they smell for months terribly. So there's quite a number of issues for Victoria Street. And we'd really like to, you know, see some progress action on what potentially, you know, is accidents waiting to happen. Haven't yet, but I'm sure that at some point something's going to happen.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our notice. Well, it's, and it probably needs a nice sort of way of bringing, you know, exposing the problems that you're having there.
Yeah,
it's a high volume use area now.
It is, absolutely. Yeah,
the high centre and the kind of biking, all those sort of issues have been culminated into that sensitivity that you're now experiencing in residents in the areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just made a note of the things we'd like to see happen, but you know, sort of the road tar sealed from the first ford to the turnaround, which is, you know, half a kilometre. Signage to indicate where the turnaround point is. That first blind corner, which is directly outside my place, I believe it's council land over the river and dockland on the roadside. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it is. Whether it's able to be cut into slightly to provide, just to provide visibility more than anything
Is
else.
this the first detailed submission that been put into council or council?
I've had two previous, service requests. That's more just to do with how I feel, but sort of, and each time I have had answers about it, and then they've put me through the Pinnacle Civil, just pass it on to them, and then they come back and say, oh no, it's not on the budget now, and,
And I've spoken year to year.
It's a little bit more of an edit, so I'll go around the table, give one as
yeah, and then signage to indicate that it's a winding, narrow, dangerous road. Speed restrictions possibly on the road.
sure.
Give way of stop sign at the holiday park intersection, speed bumps, create parking areas that don't add to the problem, and a signage, with warning we're dumping rubbish, etc.
Yeah, it's fine, we can't resolve the issue.
No, I really appreciate that, but that's the sort of,
Yeah, we want the issues put in a way, in a
Yeah.
logical way, to council so that they realise the gravity and the importance of the
Mm.
question. So I'll go around the table. Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So, just a couple of questions. What property number are you?
116.
116. So that's just past where the seal stops, is that right? And then the seal goes all the way up to
the gravel.
Gravel.
home. And that turnaround is just before the next fall, is it?
It is, yeah. It's half.
And then just in my mind, it seems like there's two things. One is related to signage and things that would just relate to road safety
Road
and
safety.
information and stuff. The second thing is that relates to the dust emissions.
Yeah.
I haven't got a question. I think it's a process thing of how best to get to the right people, to the right process,
Yes.
and whether a submission. So that's what I'll be just counselling around is how best an LTP, etc.
That's the point I was making, just the best process to get your problem in front of everybody, because it's a big one.
Dust sailing is in the annual plan every year.
Yeah.
Okay, every year. So there's a budget for dust sailing across the district, full stop. I would suggest that this be brought to the attention of our road manager, and that he goes out, perhaps with Pinnacle, in the first instance, he goes out and has a look at it. He's relatively new to council. He may not be aware of the issues that have been raised by you or by RFS previously, but I would say from this presentation today that there's an action in the minutes for him to review Victoria Street, per se, everything, signage, parking, turnaround areas, whatever that you've raised, and then it reports back to the community board on what he believes should happen. As a minimum.
Yeah, because then we at council level can advocate for prioritisation within that budget. It's because, and Ed will have to give us advice about that. Yeah.
He will.
In
And he
the
will have-
process, though.
He will have, there will be other priorities that are current at the moment. So whether it happens between now and the end of June or from the 1st of July onwards, we have to see.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that that is a minute action item for it.
So does that need more, something more from the community board to action that request?
No.
Because the
No.
To kind of on the actions and there will be a report in due course.
I can see it's the dumping of rubbish.
What are these animal carcasses that people process? Oh, okay.
I know, I think, it was the big one, that was the pig or a big pig or something. I don't know, even bigger than that.
I got told by somebody at the soy hole at the second floor that the hunters dump their pigs. The cut the bits that they don't want, so attract other animals there, so it's easier.
Yeah.
to see that animal eating.
What?
That's what they do there. So,
Just ask, where you go up that street and it splits off because one bit goes up to the camp, that creek, and that one goes down. So is that their driveway, the split off, is it their driveway or is it?
I'm not sure. There's house access to two driveways to houses on that road, as well as the parking for Rocky's Track, if people are doing Rocky's Track, so, and then the camping ground, so.
So you guys are through, right?
On straight, yes, Jay's just over the ford. Yeah, because that's not Victoria Street. Victoria Street goes over the ford, so, yeah.
Just one quick, so what actual parking is there for people that are just going to the board? Basically just earlier down.
Yeah, the first floor, yeah, not much at all. There's a parking sort of nice flat area just opposite Joanne's, but people try and get 2 or 3 cars. We've got, and my water pipe goes underneath there and I've had it broken. They come down the slight bank and things like that and they're 4-wheel drive vehicles, etc. And
that's where they get stuck, and they also get stuck digging their wheels in.
And I guess people are not, as they're driving up there, are not necessarily thinking, oh, we'll park further down here, we'll keep going.
But they can't park on the board, just right by the board, you know, they park on the corner and they go around.
I mean, you can see it there, but it's still, you know.
It's not great visible. We've got greens further up and it's not great visible.
Yeah. And they park down on the Tully Road side of the board as well, which is quite safe parking.
Sorry, I was thinking.
Andrew Bowen.
Thanks, Andrew. Just with regard to the budget, Petra, the twice that I've emailed and put service requests in, originally I was told the ceiling would be in the 2020-21 budget. I followed through. And then I put a new service request in this year in December and got a reply from Pinnacle Civil to say that no, there's no money for it. That's it.
right,
But
we can check
anyway,
on that.
the issue is bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's incomplete.
It is. The whole road needs it.
So, thank you.
So, as far as you're concerned, could you give your contact details to Ariana?
Excellent.
And then what we'll arrange is for our roading manager, which is called Ed Varley, VARLEY.
Yeah.
To contact you
Thank you.
when he comes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a copy of basically of what we've just brought up today. Do you want that? Sure. Yeah.
Well, definitely.
Situation.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thanks.
Favorite season? Died 7 of this year, I think. Any items not on the agenda? Anyone would like to discuss? No? No item from conflict of interest? It's a conflict of interest. Confirmation.
I'll move.
Take those for being read.
Second.
Any issue to write? Yes.
It should be putting else to just the same. Here is what I'm doing it in the hand.
You come in the meeting now.
In the, just with regards to minutes, item 3.2, in the discussion that we had, staff noted the other options were to go out on application, but at a fixed price, not listing, but there's no mention of that. That's what was raised with the of an option. As an option that was presented in February. And at that point, I was questioned as to why that wasn't raised at the November meeting, and was advised that we as the community board were hoping to be steered toward the tender option. I would like some of that it would.
Right. It's the original thing that the first.
Sure. I have John on stage and work with them to, so,
It's just to capture that little
Yeah.
bit of the has changed.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you.
I would like that as well, please.
yeah, I'll run it past.
So
Yes.
can I just ask a question for that?
Yeah.
So I know in there it talked about there being other options where taking fixed price for a lease term of or 6 months. That was an option, another option. Okay. Can't remember that.
A fixed price.
Am I Mr.
No, I just can't.
Not, because I do recall, we talked about steering and we could talk about it in the,
So Martin.
Yeah, I'm just remembering. Thank
Very good. Any other matters arising from the minutes? There being no other matters, I'm moving and second, thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
We've already done it, thank you. All good. So 2.1.
we've got now, actually, as prepared with the report.
Well done, Shah.
Good morning. Okay, at the last meeting, the board asked for a picture of its commitments for carbon emissions, and this report sets that out, the different types and the amounts, and we've included major events funding for the last 5 years, just to give a bit of history of that.
So take it as being read, and there's a background, a bit of history related to just where the funding has gone, what has been appropriated over the last 5 years. And as the resolution, which legal report, community board members should listen to some background related to this, so you have a better idea, and you understand the issue relating to just where the current cost is. Is only $75,000 minimum grant. Now, grant, think this about. Any questions?
For me, it's valuable to see where we've been, and for me, it's where do we go now?
Yes.
And there's quite a few issues that have been highlighted for me as a result of the report. One of them is that we make the decision to pay the rates on clubs that were on our land, and that's something to 4,000 something. Do we just blindly go on doing that? That never, you know, and so to me, this is a starting point rather than an end. And how do we move on now in terms of reviewing the policy, deciding what's important, who applies for what, is the rate going to be automatic? Are those 3 yearly contracts with applicable like the citizens advice and the band? I know they're running out come June 30. Do they just get rolled over or do they get reassessed? So to me, there's a whole lot of workshop for architects, work for some core staff. So I don't know if that's reflection of the room or whether that's just me, but I do not want to just muddle on them for another year because there's quite a lot of money that goes out really quickly. And I'm not saying we should spend less on grant, but just where does it go for the best?
Thank you, so.
The other thing that I was quite aware of, that when we were going through the community grants, when we were allocating the funding to those community grants, we talked about having a criteria so that we would be able to make better decisions next time. And I'm also aware that it's already March, coming up to April, we need to make, if we're going to decide as a board to make those decisions, that if we have a priority spending, that only spend it on clubs, or only spend it on events, or only spend it on chocolates, or whatever, then we need to decide that sooner before the goes out, because the policy says we do have to notify before the applications are due.
Is this also the time to look at also how many times we've had the same people coming through the door as well? You know, we can talk about, you know, 1 or 2 years and then, you know, then you need to go and then we should be getting other things.
Well, that to me is the whole workshop thing of how do we get that kind of clarity? And the other thing that to me causes a lot of heat is road closure. And should we be somehow incorporating road, you know, like should we be saying to Rotary, apply for a grant for your festival this January 2022, now, and this lot, if you don't do it with that, but you know, instead of this heat all the time about road closure.
Well, oh no, just thinking about it, because I think that we've actually funded the Gold Rush Market in previous years.
Yes.
Was that through the grants?
No, they are still discretionary and.
Right, so they just didn't ask us.
It didn't have it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but they blamed us for not having it.
So I think Pete's point here is that we've got obviously that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need to review that, and that consistency, which is highlighted, because of typical example of road closure. And people shouldn't have to be working ad hoc in these arrangements and know exactly what they're up to. So it's very important. Yeah, no, it's good points to be made.
So,
I was mentioned one other thing, and that is when people come for a community grant, they ask for $6,000 December, and then we go to them full. So should we be looking at it as if it's the whole, or going, because we look at $4,000, does that mean they can run off and buy the rest of it, and what do they buy? Then does that mean that they doesn't?
Yep.
I think on the grant application, correct me if I'm wrong, there might be a box saying, if we don't get the whole 6,000, can the project proceed? Isn't there? Yeah, that kind of gives them the, you know, yes, we can do some fundraising for 2,000, if we got 4, that would be great.
Yeah, it's there's a threshold level that it's set.
Yeah.
It's about 2/3 the whole time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, as you say, it's a relevant one.
look, I think what this discussion is indicating is that lots of things where there's confusion and lack of clarity and so on. Thank you for your work on this. I was interested in the grants policy of 2013 on page 2. Throughout February 2013, the board members were stating feedback was sought about the effectiveness and satisfaction of the current grant program. All boards were supportive of continuing the grants program, but this like approaches around resolution of accountability. And kind of 8 years later, we're in the same boat. So I would hardly support a workshop where we phase all these things out. Get the clarity that there's, and I've got a few questions around the paper about how things tie in to get that clarity. So that when July comes to the process and we know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, so who we're doing it, get it to
So I was wondering, once we have a workshop after this meeting, and whether we could even spend 10 minutes just on making or dumping, I don't want to dump on anybody, the issues so that when there is a workshop, we don't just start again, you know, that so somehow doing a little bit of a mind map
Give it a heads up.
in the workshop so that we can, when will the workshop be finished? What are the outcomes we want? Clarity on, so that then we'll bit clearer, otherwise we could just go round and round. Yeah, well, we have to my head, not his daughter.
Which thinking kept some between now and this afternoon or workshop. It's up. It's up.
And, yeah. Thank you, John.
See. You're on. There's somebody that, oh, this morning. I'm lagging now. Where are we? 2.2.
Submission, the draft submission.
Well, that's going to be a good one.
So I circulated some information to you prior to preparing my report, and we have received any feedback. So
I get the feedback today, but
happy with it. So the item there on pages 41 and 42, and I guess the question is, are you happy with them in as the community board submission to the LPP, or are there some additional changes that you wish to make? So I have a question. Yes, because in our community at the moment there are 2 petitions circulated, which will, they're putting petitions along the place, we're talking about going a bike path, and talking about the it's really one thing to ask. We're doing that. Is the community board allowed to have an opinion on those, and are we allowed to say that we support those 2 or not? I don't think it's appropriate at this stage to do that because they haven't been presented. And Stretch and I talked about the Thames-Coromandel walkway and whether that should be mentioned or not. My advice to him was that it shouldn't go into your submission at this stage because there isn't a project. It's an idea from the community and it needs to be developed and evolve. And so through the submission process, the idea will be put in front of the council. Council can then decide whether they wish to allocate some seed funding to investigate the project or whatever. But at the moment, the board hasn't got a proposal, so just plucking something out of fresh air is not the proper thing to do in terms of process and the proper process to roll up. Yeah, so the proper process is for them to make a submission and then for council to consider whether that's something that they wish to fund over the next 4 years or not.
so then the comment text is verified by a number of issues. We wonder also about putting a solution into generally supporting business association. On the basis that in fact the business association is important for its role in relationship to regional economic development, not necessarily on the and for their connectivity or their important their roles will bring business to our region. Because Thames region is about economic activity, which is away from tourism. Actually building that aspect of the region. I know that back in 7 putting that submission into on that basis. And I was questioning the same thing that you just questioned on whether you should support that on a regional basis.
So my understanding is that I will, the submissions will come, we'll hear them with an open mind.
Yeah.
We will then go through a decision-making process. It's up to the 3 of us sitting around the council to make sure that as well as our council head on, that we have our community board knowledge of what's important to them. And I think that it's, in terms of clean process, really important that we stay quiet about what we really believe in. So I'm saying we already
I mean, really close with the work that Sally the councils will consider the weight of this commission and their importance, relevance to the district. But more importantly, they will also consider the responsibilities to areas as well. So, right. Is anyone happy with that explanation? In terms of any further comments or things that you'd like in the submission, are there some things that you would like in the submission that's away from what your expectations are, or what you know about in relationship to groups making submissions to the long-term thing? Have we said the right things about Rhodes Park? I think we've indicated that in fact Rhodes Park is a must-have at some point. In our development program, we've only indicated the landscape stuff would be likely to do when in fact they rip up the street. But whether we've got the funds to build or whether that's the right priority in terms of that's all going to go out to the public forum in terms of the submissions. And I think we're saying that in our submission. So, so sort of saying, well, we've covered off a few areas there of important projects for us. Are there any other things that we haven't covered off?
Sort Valley Road is still really nice to have. Basket as it were, and the river intersection, but the remaining upgrade of the road, which has been designed actually, is still in the nice to have basket, and that would open up opportunities of housing development further up the road. So at the moment, none of that is in the LTP.
Yeah.
And in my opinion,
Andrew,
it should be.
it's not your place. I'm sorry, it's not your place to speak at the table.
The other thing about the Tocha Valley is the 3.9, whatever it is, billion that the government there. I'm sure as a council, I know that we're already starting to think about how can we work with government in terms of getting that slice of that pie. And my strong recommendation would be that Tocha Valley is one of those, and potential development elsewhere is the other one. So I think that whether it should be in here or not, I think that will be covered off in a regional and a national sense as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of developments, so that we're working on short-term development where housing can take place. Just giving air to these things, and haven't had confirmation where it's one haven't had confirmation yet in terms of this.
So I think that would be crucial for us, and I think that most people, but I don't know.
So that's part it should be targeted.
Absolutely. We'll be going for it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
will. And so that the only question that arises is whether you wish to identify any more projects in this list that you want to take out of the nice to
Can I just ask something? I just, in terms of the sort of precedent that we're looking at 2030, and we, I think I understand it's something like 6.25. Is it not possible to bring that back, like take what I would say, make it like, from 2025 and say $1 million each year, so that we have got a bit of
It doesn't work like that. We can't just fund and approve dollars for a period of time until the project starts. The timing of the project is specified in the LTP as 2029 on the list. And so that is the time at which, and it would be loan, so that is the time at which the loan would be raised, and then you'd start to accrue the interest and then the repayment on the loan.
So I think we're shifting it from nice to have to must have, because there must be the opportunity to make the change.
Yeah, but it's, yes, what's recommended in here is that it comes out of the unfunded list
and goes into the fund list and is shown in the LTP as a project that is timed for 2029-30, knowing full well that the figures, dollar figures that are mentioned will all get revised as we get closer to the project and the development plans are undertaken and the detailed design is undertaken and then the dollars get sorted out amongst the last thing. What this is signalling is that it is not a nice to have project. It's a project that you're saying will happen in Thames in 2029-30 and you're changing it from we'd love to have it, but we can't afford it. We are going to have it and we will find the funding when the time comes.
Something important point around. First part is dictated by issues. It's dictated by whether it can become a more pivotal blood in relationship to protection of Kent. Now, it has to be management strategies and so forth. See, that's going to be clarified, I believe, a lot more in terms of just the dynamics, hydraulics of stock banks, how they're going to function, and how roads are will sit in relationship to that. So in my mind, it's more about what are the dynamics going in terms of maintaining the current facility, which is the infrastructure is getting run down, and having a mind where that's all going to end up in terms of a replacement facility that was required for 10 years. Now, in my mind, that could happen in 5 years' time, that could happen in 2 years' time, or it could happen in 2029. So the point I'm making is that things that are going to happen in 3 or 4 years verify that situation by law. And we, as a community board, have got a bit of a problem because for us, we've got to actually maintain the infrastructure that relates to that facility. And I know some money was spent, Andrew knows about that, in terms of grandstand and where that sort of sits in relationship to where the longevity of that grandstand is now, or where it sits in relationship to the current club rooms. Because I know half the club rooms are just about in a dilapidation state versus the other half, which is okay. And then there's that issue relating to the all over flood issue is going to become it's still a problem. So, maybe 2029 was just a number.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to look at it and sort of say, well, where is that number? Where does it sit? And what's being must have, and we need to be prepared for it. So whether we should be putting it forward to 2027 to bear in mind that, I don't know. I would like to see it forward. Only because it is a number in my mind, all those other things.
So I think that whether it's 27 or 29 almost makes no difference because there is a plan change on the land that we want to shift it to. If that is unsuccessful, then we move back to the drawing board. So to me, the critical work for as community and council is to do the work in the next 3 years so that that plan change done, shoreline management's further along, and so we can say with confidence it can go there, because at the moment everyone's presuming that it'll shift there. Well, we might be stopped by the courts, and then we'll be back to where is it going to be, Metatoki somewhere. So,
And you've got another LTP of 3 years.
yeah,
Which will, and you've got an annual plan every year where you can make adjustments. So nothing is locked in stone and irretrievable.
Yeah.
I guess the intent behind the change that's proposed in submission is simply signalling not a nice to have, but a will have. And that was the intent of moving it from the unfunded to the funded.
So the messaging, in my mind, is important in the sense of people out there have already questioned me about another 9 years. What the hell's going on? And in fact, it's been on drawing boards for the last 7 or 8 years in terms of a redesign of the clubhouse. So those people that are involved in the sporting community sort of saying, okay, this is a problem.
well, they need to understand the difference.
Yeah, I know what they do. But that messaging It's getting.
I understand that study, and what you hear is, oh, another 9 years.
Well, it's not all you, no, but no, you know what I mean, yeah.
But whoever might put in 40 couple of years, that would just signal a little bit of a different message, I don't.
When my group talks about is around total value still being in the nice to have. Does that send a strong enough message to council or the government that we really want this, if we want to do a partnership with them? Should we have it in the 29-30 purely to show that it's more than a nice to have and we need help with the funding?
Well, there are two questions again. Here, your question. Your first part.
Well,
Your question.
In terms of, I'm just trying to find the total. Is it under roading, Andrew?
Sorry?
Is that the hotel extension under roading?
It's under a variety of,
Water stuff as well, isn't it?
it's water, stormwater, roading, and I think it's those three. So
Right, so we need to find, so in terms of the government funding, I think the fact that you've identified it in the nice to have, but it's unaffordable, is fine.
Yes, so, right, that's my quick, that's, sorry. Yeah, yes, that's actually better, because it means that, yeah,
And we need the money.
yeah, and that topic was on the radio saying nice to have the funded boards when it's actually, yeah. Okay.
That's good.
So I think it's fine. In terms of your sports park facility and the timing of that, that's entirely up to you. This is your submission. If you want to change, if you want to move the funding from the unfunded to the funded and change the timing, we can put that in the submission. So that's entirely your call. And I've just realised that there's 150,000 currently in 27-28 unfunded, which is the, I guess, the investigation and feasibility assessment and all the things you need to do to get the project ready to go. So that would need to be changed as well. But if you want to change that timing, just tell me what you want to change it to and I'll change the submission.
Well, I'm in support of changing timing. I don't know about the rest of the board. Cherie obviously is.
So, as that Sally was saying, is there any, I mean, so much of what might happen out at the proposed swimming pool and sports facility is going to depend on regional council plan changes, potential court action, etc. So how much do we have to bear those things in mind when thinking about the timeline, or do we just not have to think about it? I mean, is there any point in putting something in 2025, 26, when in fact you might not have decisions made until before or after it all?
I wouldn't vote against bringing it forward, if that helps community engagement. That's what we're seeing, that area, and I'm not saying, yeah, so if that's going to help with that, and it's not moving through here, you know, well then, I'm not going to argue against that.
I just think that's exactly what we're trying to do, is trying to bring it forward a little bit so people kind of get a bit more sense of this is not, you know, this is happening. And like make your submission to them, and also, you know, feel a little bit more excited about knowing that it's coming. 2029 is such a long way out.
You've got to realise that's the public rights legal submission. So the making of your submission isn't going to be able to affect the community other than by you telling them that that's what they're doing.
I think it's probably what's going to be happening.
But I think it's important that the community board actually sends out what they see.
I think we can bring it forward while still buying some time to see what happens.
And we are, because I mean, you know, that start repeating themselves in the next 3 weeks.
I think it's quicker than that.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to see it look forward to what needs to happen in the year instead of coming out here. mean, it's really just a matter of, you know, there's so many dynamics that are going to have to play out in relationship to this anyway.
So you want to know that the percentage of funding to 26, 27, and that 150,000 will be 2 years earlier. Okay.
How does that to 50,000? Will we be doing feasibility until we have clarified the,
It's still out of the next 3 years.
This is not about in
3 years.
That's the important.
Yeah.
If I have to adjust the time, I'll fix the timing up and I'll get that submission. So I know what we're intending.
and I'm happy to argue that, doing it.
So apart from the team's sports front precinct changes as discussed, are you happy with the rest of the?
Are there any other things that we should be considering?
So, point number 4, Wintec building demolition. I'm just a little bit confused. Presumably it's being earmarked for demolition because it's a leaky building
No, I understood, my understanding of that project was that it was required to be demolished because it was on an area that was going to be developed as part of the streetscape project. When you review and revise the streetscape project, make it more affordable, you'll have to decide whether that particular location is in or out of your new revised project. If it's in, then obviously it needs to be demolished, and if it's out, then it doesn't need to be demolished and you're saving that money. So that's the reason why we're contingent on the work that you're going to do over the next 12 months to revise your streetscape plan and work alongside the infrastructure people to see about economies of scale and affordability, and then come up with a new proposal for the next year's annual plan. Because the streetscape design that have been done are pretty significant and the costs are very large. And that's why it's not funded. But if you come up with something that is that's more achievable, then it may get funded over time.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, but I'm reasonably sure that we had discussed the Wintec building before and it's having to have money spent on it to keep it going.
Andrew might be able to help.
I understood it's not wisdom
Yeah.
because the money can be spent.
Right.
It's in a poor state of repair. I don't know. My wife works on it.
Well, it's shot in common non-scientific language. It's shot.
What is it?
Leaky building.
Yeah, that was a problem. Yeah.
Okay,
But,
all right. Thank you.
Right, I thought it's much older than mine.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I've got an Italian.
So the interesting point there about the demolition is the coordination of the facility and it is something that we are provision for that the next couple of years. It's crucial for Bradtown and that, so as well with that. As well, policies and things that they're ongoing support in the area. Such a crucial facility. So I'm sure that working in that, we'll need to be working on as we actually understand that first and foremost relationship with the ship on there. So relationship to providing other facilities or community in the region. In other words, those discussions need to take place with the see just what a purpose facility requires.
We're in a stage where we can ask this resolution.
Yeah, I think that is really how the things. Well, it's an important one, but not much. That is moved.
Well, the amendment for the text.
Well, it didn't.
At that time.
That's great. Well, okay, now I'm going to go to discussion. Yes.
Hang on, I wanted to say was I wanted to strongly advocate for the temporary loan toilet, which has been read, like I know that the project manager is doing a whole lot of things and you know, and contractors have been, there's a tender that's been let and stuff, but I just can't emphasise enough how important that is, and it is a really important community for us. And I hope that 30 June is actually true. Yeah.
So I've actually had a conversation with Kay State and I don't believe that contract is being to the board. So I think what this is saying that this can start. They're all around consensus there, so they have to make their changes for these ASU things that are going on in their not least, but they are doing this, you know, like they're not getting used for the anything like that. I don't know about that.
There's been a,
Visibility to the toilet roll around, just that visibility, but certainly they can really sort of like really squeezed it right down to. That's really significant.
the scope has been agreed with the community, and those two projects have been combined together. And I am told, reliably told this morning, that that work will start in the course of November.
Okay.
And I don't think it's
Right.
So they will go out in the read, won't it?
well, from its original programme, no, but the intention is to bring it into the green by the 30th of June.
That's all right. We're very
Another couple of items. The Brown Street toilet, which is the one above, that has been affected by a delay that's been caused on the toilets that are currently being installed on the Peppy Reserve in Tyrone. So instead of starting late March, they'll be starting probably June the 1st, mid to late April, and still being completed by the 30th of June. Yeah. One other item I'd like to add is the Coppery Marine Precinct. That work is going particularly well, and the intention is that next month we'll go out for tender for one of the packages, and I've suggested to the project managers that they attend, with your approval, a meeting with you or workshop with you next month to give you an update of where things are. I think we have to do that as a matter of course, and to tell you what the packages are. The design has moved about a bit over the past couple of months, and I think you need to be updated on where we are at the moment. So we'll confirm that whenever the next meeting is now. I'm getting to one of the update to you, so you know what's going on. But it's going very well.
an exciting project for Thames, so one.
Very, hugely, very. I think Scotia Valley we've discussed already. The tenders we received for the intersection, the lowest contractor was $250,000 cheaper than the next one, but on the understanding that they could only resource the project in September. So that we'll be asking council to move the funding we have this year forward into next year, so we don't have to pay an extra $250,000.
Sorry, which project is that?
Scotia Valley extension. It's the intersection. The intersection road that's within the annual plan this year.
But there are different carries forward.
Yeah, that's the intent. Subject to council approval, of course. Any more questions?
I'm really just cover operational consent. Trying to get all the road free share on the area rail travel. That's progressive. You know,
No idea.
There's been some progress made. Because it was an area that had some issues by the authority. But it's like, I know that we're working on it, want to get an update in relation to that, that's okay.
No idea about that.
Yeah, that's the email message.
Yeah.
So that's what I said.
Yes, sure. Any other matters wrong that we've recommended? No. Okay. Matters. The last thing we're going to do is look shortly. So, thank you. Second, page 3. What time is it? We want to break it for
Can we get through to the end of the
Oh, we can do that, okay.
presentation, maybe?
At the end of it. Okay, very excellent, please.
It's John.
We could have John online.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Nicole here. And John.
It's on the beach somewhere.
I take it that the report's been read. And
Yes,
are there
it
any
has been.
questions?
I've got one question.
Hold on.
Sorry, yes. What's happened there? Ah,
Everything's gone still.
Like, I can understand perhaps the intent is this is the only thing we're changing, but I could also read that into we're never able to change anything again. So I just wondered whether that just sort of went off in my brain as incongruence for the future. So if people agree with me, I don't know what the solution is, but
yeah, I think it's just in terms of this lease, so it's just the extension that it's under the same conditions as.
yes,
has been.
but could we say that in a way that when we're all living in Bali or something, that other people don't have to interpret it?
We can make it clear.
Yeah, we don't need that. Number two of three, you don't have to agree to there being no other changes. All you're doing is agreeing to those changes.
Yeah.
So just delete three,
Delete.
part two, and you're achieving what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the second bit of point 3.1 says on the same terms and conditions held, and at least so that kind of covers that.
It does.
I'm happy to move it with that alteration.
John, have you got the essence of that, John?
No, Mr. Chairman, my system froze while you were discussing that, so I didn't hear any of the discussion around the concern point.
Right. Got to reiterate that?
Oh, they just want to remove under 3.2 from the recommendations, John. They don't think that's necessary to.
And sorry, what was 3.2, Nicole? Sorry.
Oh, agree to there being no other changes to the Hauraki Aero Club lease term.
I was just saying that that could be potentially in the future misconstrued as we're never able to change it. I understand the intent that this is the only change of current, but I've just been here long enough to know that in a future, those kind of things can be used for confusion.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I actually don't think that's actually a concern, because what we would do here is we would be varying the current lease for the Aero Club to include that area. So the variation is very clear that it relates to just an extension of area. And as Nicole has said, all the other terms of the lease remain as they are unchanged. So if in the future date someone wants to do something different, whether it be council or the Aero Club, then that's a matter that would have to be agreed between the parties.
So John, what we're going to do is remove that statement that just says agreeing to there being no other changes, because it's not necessary. We're going
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Just delete that item because of the potential confusion. So I think you're fine.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted everybody on the same page there.
You want to move on?
Yeah, no other issues arising from the variation. Move it, you'll send you. Cheryl, second. Thanks, Peter.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, good.
Can I just say,
Sure.
what's the best time we have? Thank you.
Good work. Gives me action schedule. That has been read. Around, or did you
I do. Yeah, I did want to say that Lorna will be joining us to do an update of.
We're just, apologies from the record, because we're on with the background group for the appeal to the other thing, we had a meeting with the public youth group, and after being taken in February, picture of the video of that. One, we had another schedule for this week, but it's been postponed until after May. In terms of the update, we had the expression of interest that we count for stage one of the development, and we've had kind of reasonable feedback about that. We would expressions of interest, and there were all tender process and they go through until the end of April. So there's not much more in terms of any progress until we get all those tenders in and then and also those expressions of interest reflect out to them to get them formally put in the tender now as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Just on price, in terms of advertising as well, and Michael, the original that they've gone out to a lot of e-field groups around the country. And in fact, things with January having that meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, this space. Thank you. Any other questions?
So just a question, back in January last year, pre-COVID, there was in public forum, there was an item about Thornton Bay culvert under State Highway 25, Adams Road. And it just kind of seems to have dropped off. I blame COVID for it, but it seems to have dropped off, and I just wondered if anyone can find out where that's.
The easiest thing to do would be for Ari to check that on the action schedule.
Would you mind? Thank you. I did just have a quick query in public the other day about it.
Did you get that, Ari?
Is the members report for the last action, did we eventually were able to put a sign up for the water facility?
It's coming, isn't
Really?
it? Yeah.
Very sure.
Done.
Very sure.
When do the submissions close?
April the 12th.
Every month to get it there. Very good. Being, movements into the city. Done. Members' reports. I've been once at the actually sitting. There are a few things that I've been doing, but I'll put into the next report really. They're not significant, so. Yep.
I went to the meeting at obviously they don't even know issues, but they are working a sport evening. To put a call or to put it down, they go there and do the CFS sports evening. So if anybody's interested, and then of course we've spoken. Kate Stan much of her work out the great progress, and I've also been around and out to the sports people about what the needs to them to make submissions to the plan. It's my preference.
Thanks, Sheree. Yeah. Robert, the report on really was
Yeah, so there's been lots of activity and comments around the Mary Street Great Divide. One thing that has come out is around that the red painting on the road. And we've had some, well, I mean, I've had it reported to me that there's been some issues around that. I did kind of think that there might be something in this meeting about Mary Street. There's not. But yeah, there is a feeling that the confusion between the red painted on Queen Street on the pedestrian crossing, which is actually a gazetted legal pedestrian crossing, and the red stripe on Holland Street, which is not legal. And I just feel that if we're showing that we're being reactive and listening to what people say, I just think removing that confusion, because I just think that, not saying it's me awake at night, but if someone gets hit on that street, I'm not talking about liability or anything, but I'm just, the whole Mary Street thing, I think will be tainted by that, and it just really worries me that something's going to happen. And
So would you change the colour?
I wasn't really commenting, even though it's in the members' report, I'm not sure if we can openly discuss it, but we probably can we?
Oh, I think so, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that to me just really concerns me, self-defense, to know what others are. Sally shaking me, leave my
Well, I guess I just kind of step back from this specific issue and talk big picture. Hannah Rose is undertaking some consultation with businesses about the Mary Street project, and there is a survey monkey. Mike, is that up now or?
Yeah, it is. It's been up for a good week or so, maybe two, and will be open until I think up in April, towards the end of April.
So the idea is that we are constantly getting feedback about how successful or otherwise the project is going.
Yeah.
I think, really interesting thing was that there was positive feedback. So the project team will look at that feedback and decide whether there are things that need to be responded to or not on an ongoing basis. So if that's one of the issues that's been raised, and I haven't got over the particular details of it, then the project team will look at that and decide whether there needs to be a response or not. I can tell you that those red road markings are common practice throughout New Zealand, so they're NZTA approved, and they are signed to say that pedestrians need to look. It's just to show the pathway, not that they have rights. And they are used in a lot of places throughout New Zealand. And a lot of the issues are about educating people about how to use these facilities rather than necessarily having to change those facilities because they are standard.
And I guess also I'm very mindful that, this board is governance and we're not management. And so I'm trying to make sure that I'm not, telling people what to do with the project. So
I think really what you're saying is that you'd like at next community board meeting, you'd like an update on feedback related to the Mary Street project, and that's what we can do.
Yeah.
So that will be Rose, that will be bringing that to you next time. Along with Hannah Rose. So they've got two thousands.
Could I just also just adding to your comments about when I was on the radio, you mentioned those conspiracy crossings.
Yeah.
And how they operate, which is what I did. Unlike formal pedestrians, zebra crossings, drivers do not have to stop to allow pedestrians to cross as they would be at a zebra crossing. But to be polite, drivers should stop for people on the footpath waiting to cross. So if you see people on the footpath, drivers should be stopping. And if people are already crossing, drivers must keep waiting. In fact, I experienced that a couple of days ago, right on the red marker line. So I guess there's a bit of a shake up. I think that is all straightforward enough, but I'm not quite sure that's correct.
So it was only your words or were those said to you by?
Those are the words that Mike told me with. Put together, that's how I can.
And that's from the roaming manager.
I do not expect to stop with lines. If I'm driving, I do not expect to stop with me.
But you're going slow enough. that you can if you have to, because it's high density and you wouldn't be speeding along there at 50, even though you legally can.
Or that if I hit someone,
You know, stop if there were people on the footpath waiting to cross.
My experience as a pedestrian and cyclist is that most people don't know how to use the crossing as full stop. Even in the river crossing, right? And somewhere in there, I understand.
So I'm,
No?
It's right there.
Yeah, no, I agree.
so I'm reassured by that. It would be good if that, because you also mentioned about education. So I don't know that there's been, I mean, obviously, Jack's been talking about it on the radio, but actually on site, I don't think there's any education about those signs, but I can stop and look written down on the road, so I don't know if that's something that might be considered. Okay, all right.
Can I ask a comment?
Yes, sure.
It's not unusual that signs are installed close to the crossing to say pedestrians have to give way. I've seen it. This was my third experience, and normally to avoid the confusion, signage put up.
Right, okay, so that's something Amber Rose could.
She's working on it right now.
So what would be an do
It's quite bad.
But then they wouldn't qualify. So
Yeah, it's a different.
it's under the NCTO rule.
They're going to-
It's about that, why as an enforcement. And creating a forest-themed environment helps the normal in terms of safety.
Yes.
Right, that's me. Sorry, that was so protracted.
I think on that concept, no, I've done Cambridge with the big blue dots and you know, that whole sort of slowly down type thing, which you see.
I don't know, I think it red stripes confusing, blue dots with glass in it.
Painted the blue circles on the road as big intersection. And all it does is sort of kind of like you sort of,
People would be.
and people sort of slow down.
I think from the morning program yesterday morning. I think so.
without some stuff.
Yes, I could be, of course.
Yeah. Right, that's me.
Yeah, it's probably that. I did write it on the weekend, but I was late. The Business Association report, which got there in front of you. Any questions? Just two things probably. One is just positive comments on talking about the new developments that are going on around apartments. People talking about the energy that Bob feels creating around theatre works. Saying, well, Mary Street is quite good, isn't it? I'm beginning to hear, or I'm feeling in the last month, I've heard more positive comments about what's going on than negative. So that's just one thing. Second thing relates to the Tauranga Valley and the fact that on April 17th, they're having a fundraiser at Auckland. And the posters gone up around the town and stuff like that. So, that would just, the hall got some funding from the Lion Foundation to do some repairs and stuff. And they built a new bath and they painted the hall. So this is the right money to actually put a seal on the car park and do some bits and pieces. So a lot of energy up the current at the moment.
So what time was that there?
11 until 2 o'clock on April 17th, Saturday, April.
Excellent, thank you.
I think Chris York is the president of Rotary and member of lodges, and I'm not quite sure of the lodge or people in town. I'm not quite sure where this should go, but he's been talking over the next 12 months. They're having quite big anniversaries, and he's wanting to plant a couple of trees on our land and potentially a seat. And Rotary's they're thinking about Kurunui Bay because of their contribution. So it needs to go to Derek. So I just thought if that was on the action sheet, well then we could process that. So I thought the top was fantastic. The town really rocked, and I think we should be doing everything we can to make another spot. I know that they potentially want to use other towns, but I think we should have a good go at it again. I think that LTT for me is extraordinarily important. What I've found is that people tend to only submit on the negative, what they don't like, and sometimes you don't know what the silent majority, whether that's apathy or whether they agree. So if anybody can do anything to support people to submit on things they like, that's really useful when you're sitting at hearing for 3 days. I think Mary Street, I'm hearing more positive than negative, and people are just getting used to it still. I represented the mayor at the conference for the students at Wintec for the community nursing 18-month course and the year certificate of mental health support. I think it's really amazing to have adult students of that number in our town. A lot of them locals, a lot of them not. I felt very proud, and I think as an individual and as a community board, I'm not saying it's about money, but it's about supporting that development in our town. And the only other thing I wanted to say was I just noticed that sometimes a lot of our projects get caught up because we find out about important archaeological sites once we've started, and there are all kinds of ways of being in the world, and there are lots of regulations, and that is one of them. And why don't we do pre-archaeological assessments rather than, oh bugger, we've been interrupted again, sorry, this is still being recorded, doesn't matter. And so to me, getting it right for our partnership with iwi is important, and I think that somehow we need to incorporate that, but that's not my business, but it's my opinion. And I think we're doing really well. And I only want to say one more thing. Once we're through the LTP, as a community board, we've only got another 18 months to go. So I really want, and with the new manager coming on board, we start working July 1 on both the implementation of our plan, but working on what we want for the next year as well. Because I think we're always catching up, and I'd really like to be ahead of whatever ball is there. Right, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's an exciting new opportunity for us to be working with Rose, which is not good.
Yeah, and so how can we support her and her support her?
And especially with her focuses on recreational activity, the things that challenges we have as a town, sure should be invaluable in that space as well.
And thanks, for all the
So, thank you.
So I went and saw, spent some time with 3 of the members of the Thames Museum. What an amazing asset we have here in this town. It's absolutely incredible. And yeah, just having a good look around at what they have is yeah, I was really, taken back, and the amount of time and effort that they put into holding these things for future generations, and for people now. So I'm quite fortunate that I'm able to attend a lot of things, both as an individual and as a community board member. I was at the COG Community Organisation Grant meeting on the 18th of March, and I was really pleased that I was there because somebody turned around and said, "Is there anybody from council here?" And I said, "Well, I'm from the community board," and they went, "No." You know, the typical thing that comes up at a count, councillor has been funny, so I was pleased that I was there. I met with, St John's, regards the connecting, forum, which is to minimise social isolation. And that seems to be going really well and having some traction now. And I attended the Eastern Waikato Civil Defence meeting on the 19th of March as well. And incidentally, and I won't spend a lot of time with this, Martin, because I know it's your portfolio, but I've now had conversations with two people quite randomly about the concern that the Grahamstown buildings are going to disappear because they're getting so old and a lot of them are non-compliant or becoming non-compliant. So we just wondered whether it's possible maybe to work with council to allow them to do what they need to do at the back of the building, but actually keep the facades, so we don't lose those facades and the, the look of the place. It's such a vital part of Thames, but a lot of them are getting really concerned about the age of the buildings behind those facades. So just a thought, I'm just putting it there, and and it's just two people have said that to me, and they're not connected. And I thought that's interesting, so there's obviously some concern there that we're going to lose it as part of our heritage.
Yeah, because I don't know, if you've noticed alongside Soul Cafe, there's work going on, things of work going on around the back and down the side of that. With the intention of obviously keeping the
About the lock,
keeping the
facade, while the buildings are still kept up to date.
A lot of that work could have been advanced. Structuring council might be able to help us with that online. In terms of update the community board, so just the general assessment relating to the buildings, the old historic buildings in the Thames, giving us an update in terms of the issues. I know that the primary focus relating to the site issues. In other words, the results were one of the important things of security and safety. So that was an important aspect relating to all of the historic buildings. So whether there's somebody that can give us an update, I know we had a public meeting about it, and there were council staff involved. I'm just trying to think back to that a little while ago, years ago, we had it here. And a lot of the business owners, property owners, landlords actually turned up to it. Remember that simple. And so the engineers on it.
So definitely arranging, we'll talk to Kareem about that.
No, that'd be awesome. Yeah, really awesome. Get a bit of an update on that.
That's mine.
Thanks, you're probably trying to get my attention. All done.
I'll move it with you, all right.
Well done.
And thank you, Cheryl, for the, series.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.